All right, it's time for another podcast. This is a podcast that I probably shouldn't be doing. By the way, that's Stay Away From Me from Silly Fools, which is a band out of Thailand. They only do a couple English songs, but they rock, so I like to plug them. Not sure it's totally legal that I plug them, but you can find their songs on Amazon. So anyway, just to kind of set the stage, I'm up late. It's been a rough day. I got sidetracked into a bunch of political discussions that sometimes brings out not necessarily the best in me. If you go back a couple podcasts, I talked about politicians. Today was more focused on their followers, though. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Donald Trump tonight, and there's just a whole bunch of stuff surrounding him. But just to let you know where I come from, I support Donald Trump. He's not the only candidate that I support, but I like his stances on trade, so let's get that out of the way. He's the only politician out of the whole bunch of them who's even made any kind of indication that our trade agreements that are bleeding hundreds of billions of dollars from our economy quarterly need to be revamped. I mean, if Americans really knew how bad our trade agreements are, and it's not, the little details are often hidden and obscured. You know, I think right now we're limited to, say, like 5,000 cars we can import into Japan, but Japan can import hundreds of thousands of cars each year. And this is just one example. China's worse. China doesn't really acknowledge our intellectual property at all, so they just reverse engineer and steal everything. Their military radios and a lot of their ground mobility vehicles, the light ones, are basically Humvees that they've ripped off. And that's just Miltech. It goes on and on. They dump. You know, if you know anything about trade war, we're getting our pants, or just our rears kicked, our rears handed to us. And none of these politicians, even conservative guys like Ted Cruz that I like, have really anything to say. They might make vague notions of doing something. Trump has actually come out and said our trade deals suck and they need to be renegotiated. A lot of people say, well, he hasn't really offered a plan, but none of them have. At least he's saying they need to be renegotiated and sending people that actually know how to renegotiate to deal with them. So that buys a lot of support for Trump for me. The second reason Trump gets a lot of support for me is he's not part of the rhino machine that's dominated the political Republican Party for so long. I mean, Jeb Bush is not a conservative. He should not be running as a Republican if Republicans still claim to be conservative. And there's a lot of other ones. Christie up there. Some of Christie's ideas are okay, but he's pretty much a rhino. And, you know, it's just a bunch of guys. I actually like the candidates this time around. I mean, there's way too many of them, but I think a lot of them are generally of higher caliber than in the past. But the problems with them is even though you listen to them and they say all the right words, you start looking at them and there's sketchy stuff. I'd say the best out of them all for me at this point would be, say, Cruz and Jindal. And I think my problem with Jindal is he's a little bit too into the red, white, and blue. I mean, I'm patriotic, but the thing is our country has serious corruption problems, and the form of capitalism we have, I would say, is more crony capitalism, and we'll get into that with Trump. It's not true capitalism, and the idea of just having a free market as it exists, again, with our horrible trade agreements, it just doesn't work. We're just going to become a second-rate power and then a third-rate power as our know-how, industrial base, jobs, wealth bleed to other countries. And we just see it happening in real time, but yet we have all these ideologues that masturbate, and I'm sorry to use that term, to free trade. Free trade, free trade. This one guy I got in an argument with, and he's like, well, I don't need you to tell me how to make moral decisions in trade when I brought up the fact of child labor and stuff. Well, apparently the whole world does, because we're exploiting the third world, and those governments of all these various countries are allowing their people to be exploited because they understand that the economy is a means to national power. So, and the only labor one of the few assets they've got is basically an unlimited supply of third world labor to exploit. Like in China, I wouldn't say China's third world anymore. They're pretty much almost as powerful as us in some ways maybe even more at this point. But they exploit the hell out of their unskilled laborers. I mean, 14 hours a day, low pay. One day they might only have to work 6 hours a day, and that's basically just to give them minimal time off just so they don't work them to death. But yet no one cares about that. No one, all these little trade agreements, all these very moral, staunch Republicans, they don't give a crap about all that. They don't give a crap about the American worker. Oh, they play lip service. What matters to you is what you bring up. So if you claim to be a conservative, but you never bring up trade, or you never bring up military technology going to other countries, or you never bring up Planned Parenthood and abortion, that means you really don't care, or it's a soft priority for you. It's not a hard priority. So like if all these supposedly conservative Republicans, when I bring up trade, if I can get through their programming, free trade good, free trade good, free trade good, if I can get through that, then they'll acknowledge, oh yeah, our trade agreements are bad. But if you don't put a finger on them and just let them go as they go, they won't generally bring it up. They might be a little perturbed at China and make a vague thing, oh, we got to do something about it. But it's not going to be an argument that they spend time on much. They're not really concerned about it. And I don't care what you believe about yourself. Again, what you advocate and what concerns you and what you talk about is really where your focus is, right? So if you say you care about it, but you never bring it up, you never talk about it unless someone prods you, it's the same with this amnesty stuff with Trump. The middle class is fed up with illegal immigration. I'm a Christian. I like people. I think people should be free to come here if they go through the legal process. But we're a nation of laws. We're not a nation of, the executive branch gets to pick what laws they want to enforce and make up their own laws and break the laws whenever convenient. Congress is just there as kind of an advisory role. A lot of quote conservative Republicans will play that line like they believe it. But look at all the candidates that they're arguing for support for. I mean, like, say, Perry. Oh, Perry got tough. He put, their equivalent, I don't know what it's called, but their equivalent of the highway patrol on the border. You know what? There's still hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens crossing the border. And, yeah, they're catching a few more, but in actuality, beyond token measures, they've done nothing. And it's not just illegal aliens from Mexico coming across. There's hit teams coming across. There's cartels coming across. If you do a little Google search on some San Diego Port Authority, there might be weapons of mass destruction coming across. Get some quotes from him. And our government, because business wants that cheap labor and because it's politically incorrect, won't do anything about it. And so the Republican Party's like this nest. And everything that comes out of the D.C. cartel, as Cruz calls them correctly, it's coming out of this nest. In order to function, to some degree, you have to deal with this nest. That is where Trump's appeal comes in to people like me. He's not part of that nest. But the nesters, for lack of a better term, the rhinos, do have valid critiques of Trump. One, he hasn't always been a Republican. Neither was Reagan. Two, he's had a lot of liberal stances in the past. That is a valid critique. He has, and the fact that he's just switched so quickly, I agree, it's problematic. But at the same time, the trust of the Republican Party is so low now with what Bonner and McConnell have done, all the various promises that have been made that have never come to fruition. It's like, is ACA being defunded? Is the Republicans doing anything to stop executive? I mean, we got that one guy from, I forget his name, Growdy or whatever, from Ohio, who is constantly talking about it. You've got a couple other efforts, but it just seems like a lot of times they're just for show. There's really nothing coming of it. And so we've got a bunch of people in the primaries that are acting very much like conservatives now. I do agree that Jindal's legitimate conservative. I think Fiona has some things to say, and she's intelligent and comes off well. Both of these people are in the junior varsity leagues. Carson's good. Carson's got some issues, though, with forced vaccination that I don't like. I think that shows he's intellectually arrogant because he only looks at things from one domain. It's like, oh, medically, look at vaccinations. Oh, medically, vaccinations are good. Thus, it's stupid to be against vaccinations. Thus, we should force all the crazies to have vaccinations. That just shows he doesn't understand that vaccinations go beyond just the medical science. They go into big business. They go into pharma practices. They go into medical cartels, if I can use that word. And there's a lot of other issues besides just medical stuff. And he's only looking at it from a medical perspective. And there's more domains that are coming into play here, which is disappointing from him. Otherwise, I like what he says a lot of the times. I mean, a lot of the candidates are good, or good sounding, but should I trust them? And the answer generally is no. I'll take Cruz as an example. I loved Ted Cruz. Everything he said, for me as a conservative, was right on. And then he goes around and votes for the TPA, or fast track, which gives the president the power to get rid of the 75% majority that's needed for trade pacts, instead just a simple majority, and the Congress has to give an up or down vote. They can't give, add amendments or bring it to discussion. I understand that there's sometimes, depending on what bozos are in Congress, it can be very frustrating. But that's the process. And what Cruz just voted for was nerfing that process. And Cruz is too dang smart to not know that pushing fast track with TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and other mega trade agreements on the table that are all bad for America, that passing fast track wouldn't help enable these to be passed. His office put out a little statement talking about how really it was a good thing. It's all, excuse my language, BS. It's not. And he's smart and he knows that. And then you start researching him, you find out his wife works for Goldman Sachs and that she's part of all these globalist programs. You think like he can talk out of his mouth one way, but you think there might be a little problem at home when his wife's basically working against conservatives and what she does. So again, you have to research these people. And again, it doesn't fully eliminate Cruz from being a contestant in my mind, but it brings serious questions about him. Like Fiorina, I remember when she was running HP, and I was a lot younger then, so I didn't pay attention too much, but I was a techie, and there was a lot of pushback with some of the decisions she made at HP. A lot of people think she screwed up big time. So again, we got to look at her leadership beyond what she's just talking about. And so on and so on. Getting back to Trump. So a lot of valid critiques again. Trump was a business guy who bribed everybody. Let's just call it like it is, bribes. And I think Trump essentially does that. He says, oh yeah, I bought and sold politicians. And rhinos in the Republican Party are horrified that he'd used that language. And that pisses me off because that's progressiveness. The progressives are more concerned with substance over form, substance over content. I mean, he's saying the reality of the situation on the ground, and he's got the guts to say it. The others won't dare put it in that language, even though that's exactly what happens. Most of those guys on stage, in order to get to that point, have made all sorts of bad deals, have made all sorts of sellouts. They've sold themselves. It's not just Hillary Clinton that's selling, give me money to various accounts and I'll do favors for you. It's most of those guys up there. Jeb Bush was, he says he got rid of or quit funding Planned Parenthood in Florida, and maybe he did. That's good. But at the same time, he was on this board that basically gave $500 or millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood, and during that time, he didn't squawk. So you want to talk about flipping morals with Trump? What about flipping morals with Jeb? And a lot of these guys have that. You look at Rand Paul. Now, I like some of his libertarian stances, but is he just posturing? I think it's a little both. He's posturing and he really does believe it. But someone pointed out, and there's a new bill that has something to, I forget what it is. It has something to do with with basically the right to not be spied on from the government, and he hasn't said anything about it yet. And also remember that Rand Paul supported Mitch McConnell. How many of you supposed conservatives like Mitch McConnell, the guy who recently just shot down the efforts to defund Planned Parenthood? According to him, it's like, well, I'll shoot it down so we can bring it up later. You know, maybe if everybody just quit playing the political game and just did what was right, we wouldn't have to bring it up later. You wouldn't have to vote no. And him and Bonner in there, they're just huge disappointments to conservatives. So that's another issue that all these party apparatchiks and GOP cultists, and I'm going to say that's what they are. He's not one of us. He hasn't been with us all the time. You know what? Conservatives out there don't really care because we're not so much loyal to the GOP. We're loyal to saving the country and having people in there that will act on conservative values. Even if they lose, from our perspective, it's better for them to be in there and fighting because it might change people's minds to see somebody stand for something and have a backbone instead of doing things by focus groups and committee. Why? Because focus groups and committee have got us nowhere. You know, you can call yourself a conservative, but if you constantly are trying to slide yourself to the left to be more electable, then you're betraying your conservative base who want somebody in there to fight for them. Well, you know, we got to, compromise so we can at least be in there and win. Really? How has that worked out? You know, polls up until recently constantly showed that the number one ideological group in America is conservatives. I think it's still the largest, but it might be changing a little bit. So why don't you act like a conservative? It seems like you'd get all sorts of support, but you don't. You always go, we got to slide to the left so we can get more votes for election. Really, how's that worked out? How'd that worked out with Romney? How'd that work out with McCain? How did that work out, I don't know, in the last couple elections? It hasn't. But you guys keep doing it, even though Republicans won both the House and the Senate. They control the purse strings. They're still just wussies and trying to stop everything that Obama's doing. Why are they wussies? Because the same people who fund Obama are the same people that fund a lot of the rhinos in there. And when they say jump, the rhinos have to say how high, because in order for them to maintain power, they need money. In order for them to get money, they got to do favors so they can get bribes. It works both ways. Trump is not the only guy out there who's giving money to both sides. I mean, it's a valid critique. Well, Trump gave money to Hillary Clinton and all this. Yeah, because he was buying influence just like everybody else did. If we're going to bitch and moan about Trump, which we should on this one, it's a legitimate bone to pick. Let's take every donor that gave to every other candidate, and let's see what other donations they've made over the past 20 years. Excuse me. We're going to find that a lot of the donors that these Jeb Bushes and all these other guys are eagerly sucking up to have also donated to Democrats, have also donated to Hillary. Why? Because they're business people trying to buy influence. So a lot of people are just scared of Trump. Oh, he used to do liberals. He used to make liberal talking points. He used to, give money to both sides. It's horrible. Almost every businessman out there is doing that. That's how the game is played. And what Trump is saying is, I mastered the game. I went through it, and I beat it. I won. I have an empire worth, $10 billion? I don't need to be bought anymore because I'm self-sufficient. I know how the game is played because I've played it and won. I know what all the problems are because I've used those problems to my advantage. I'm one of the few people who has the guts to face the system and do something about it. And you know what? It's a legitimate concern to say, I don't believe you. I think you're a snake. I think you're a slime ball. I think you're all in it for yourself. I don't trust you. Those are all legitimate concerns. But the problem is, that, and this is what GOP apparatchiks don't understand, their brand is tarnished. Most of us conservatives don't trust them anyway. It's like we're willing to take a chance on somebody who might actually do something. Because even Ted Cruz, as conservative as he has, and Cruz actually has a little bit of street credit, so does Jindal, because they have both gone up against the system. Cruz has fought for gun rights and actually stopped a huge liberal push. I forget what the case was that he fought on, but he as a lawyer actually stuffed the government back in their effort to try to disarm the republic. And Jindal has gone up against the leftist and come under persecution from the judicial system and the Obama administration. So both of those people in my mind have legit street cred of going up against either the leftist or the establishment and proving that they're reliable to some degree. And again, when you start researching them, each has their faults, though Jindal not many. So again, my arguments weren't, you got to vote for Trump or you got to love Trump. My arguments were against GOP operatives and, people that are looking at the GOP as a cult. I want them to understand that their brand is tarnished, and rather than constantly going to the left to try to win elections, which fails, which disappoints everybody, makes the GOP a laughing stock and mocked by moderates, liberals, and pissed off hardcore conservatives, they need to start going to the right because they're about to lose their base. I mean, this whole debate thing was a hatchet job on Trump. I mean, Republicans were so hardcore, just GOP, not necessarily conservatives, even though in their mind they think they're conservative. You ask them, "Oh, I'm conservative." Oh, really? Do you act conservative? Are you maximizing your political participation to actually affect conservative change, or are you just relying like a Stockholm syndrome to somebody who beats you and lies to you all the time, tells you that they're going to go conservative, but when they're elected they immediately flip left, and you just keep going for it? But you want me to trust that group more than you want me to trust an outsider. I mean, it's a matter of faith. You got to pick one or the other. You got to pick a guy who was a total snake. A lot of people say Trump's an ass. I agree he's an ass. He's a self-centered ass. There's no getting around it. But sometimes those are the types of people who get things done, who you want to get things done. America is in bad shape. These are like Trump talking points, but they're also my talking points. And they were before I heard any of this stuff from Trump. And he's hitting those points. And I go, yeah, right on. And what does the mainline conservatives do, supposed conservatives, when I do that? They're sitting attacking Trump supporters rather than, which are, by the way, the majority of the Republican base right now. Trump has the most support out of that group. So instead of worrying about the left, instead of wanting to give Trump a fair shake, they're offended at his hurtful language. What a bunch of neutered feminine weirdos. I mean, show some guts. It's pathetic. Oh, now I'm a sexist. Again, I agree with Trump. Are we going to be more worried about politically correct language? Is that because that's what the dictates from the left world? Are we going to adopt their agenda, their talking points, their worldview? The way you symbolically go through politics, you have to not say these words, and if you refer to this type of thing, you have to do it this way so no one feels hurt. Or are we going to face the issues that threaten this country and deal with them? And it seems like a lot of conservatives, supposed conservatives, Republicans, rhinos, have been absorbed into this progressive worldview where we have to look at things from them the same way they do. We have to use the same language they do. We have to have the same political mores and taboos as they do. I reject that. Trump supporters generally reject that. That's why they support Trump. Yes, he's had liberal views in the past, some of them very disturbing. I remind you, Reagan also was against assault rifles and pro some gun control, though he was soft on that. It wasn't like a big agenda item. But if you asked him, he said, "Oh yeah, we should limit guns' rights," which I disagree. And Trump has said that in the past, which I totally disagree. But at the same time, right now the critical threat is just the hundreds of billions of dollars in the lost industrial capacity that just bleeds out of our country. And not one of those candidates, Jindal, especially not Jeb, Cruz, remember what his wife does, have really dealt with this. And this is a huge issue. And If you claim to be a conservative, if you claim to love this country, but you're so brainwashed into this free trade garbage crap, as you sit, just drive around, go to a mall, see all the stores that are empty. I mean, look at our industrial capacity. It's gone. Without industrial capacity, you cannot be a superpower. Lowering taxes so you can compete so our companies compete is a good idea, but at the same time, you can lower them a lot. And American workers who need to survive in an American economy cannot survive being paid 25 cents an hour. And that's the competition. So no matter what we do by lowering taxes and all this, sure, it might help a little bit. Sure, we still have some productivity enhancers that other countries don't have, so our workers can make a little bit more than that. But those other countries are going to catch up, and if they continue to pay their dudes, $1 an hour, we just can't support that. And all the government programs that the liberals insist that we have, that you guys rhinos never challenge, you say you will, but you never do, that's all got to be supported by an economy. And if the economy goes, what is it, like 71%, and the Republican candidates were good about mentioning this, 71% of the current budget goes to entitlements and servicing on the debt. Well, soon it'll be 80%, 90%. You're not going to have a military if you do that. It's going to continue to shrink. Obama wants to shrink it to 3.2% of the GDP. And then 10 years out, we'll have to shrink it to like 2.8, and then it'll go on. And our power will become a paper tiger. Other countries like China, Russia, Iran, they'll all be challenging us, and we'll be pushed back. We'll be, overextending, and God forbid we get into war where we actually lose. Not lose in the political arena, which we've done since Korea, but actually lose on the battlefield in a major way, which hasn't happened since times around World War II. And I can see it happening. And you rhinos, you think that you care, but if you don't deal with these core issues, you don't. It's just that simple. This other thing, Trump went bankrupt 4 times. Again, Trump's a snake, and he used all sorts of crooked business practice. But remember, Jeb Bush was a consultant on the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, so he's all about big companies and bankruptcies too. And I don't know if Trump personally went bankrupt, just the companies that he had did. And yeah, it sucks, it's bad. But again, the guy's a snake. He's using the system, and it worked, and he won. He beat it. And none of these other guys have any clue about that. I mean, is there any other business people there, Fiorina? And she pretty much, again, it's kind of questionable what she did at HP. The other guys, Kucinich worked in the private sector for 5 whole years. Wow, impressive. Cruz talks about the Washington cartel and stuff. It's like in professional politicians. Cruz, I love you. I like a lot what you say, but have you looked in the mirror? Because you're kind of a professional politician. So those arguments are void. But anyway, circling back, let's talk about a couple other things. One, this debate that happened. First question out of the box is basically a Hitler Youth, you must swear allegiance to the Reich or you're an evil person, right out of the gate at Trump. Will everyone here swear allegiance to the GOP and not promise not to run as a third party? And in Trump's own words, and I believe this, why should he? When they're not going to give him a fair shake, when they're always going to, the Republican Party's always going to look at him, the apparatchiks and the operatives and the rhinos that think they're conservatives but aren't, are they ever really going to give him a fair shake? The leverage he has is that he can break off and go a third party. He can do it. He's got the money. He's got the support. So he can do it. Does he want to do it? I don't think he wants to do it. At least according to him, he doesn't want to do it. But it's his leverage to make sure that those rhino apparatchiks treat him fairly. Once he gives that up, they're not going to treat him fairly. I mean, how long did it take? He made that comment about Megan whatever. Oh, you can see the blood coming out of her eyes or wherever. And everybody's always talking about menstruation, blah, blah, blah. Oh, acting like little metrosexual progressives that were offended. Oh, that's so offensive. That language is so offensive to me. Oh, my gosh. What happened to you guys? Come on. Well, we can't use that language now. Again, you're taking progressive culture and importing it. It used to be, people had guts and could stand up. And yes, that statement could be interpreted some ways that are bad. But it's like, come on. Dude, the country's dying and you're worried about politically incorrect language? Now, to your point, though, I do think that Trump can't keep pulling that. And that's going to be a make it or break it thing for him. Because now people see, it's easy to get Trump into trouble. All we got to do is jab at him and he'll jab back. And it'll, we can edit sound bites from it. Like I saw these people saying, Trump said so-and-so was menstruating. And that's why. That's not what he said. But that's how they'll craft it. So they've got the weapon now. They go, we know the Achilles heel of Donald Trump. So we'll make sure in every debate, every news thing that we can, we're going to get something that will jab him and make him respond back. It'll deter him from the message that is attracting the real conservative base and get him into a bunch of political trouble that eventually might sink Trump's ship. That is a legitimate danger for him, and he needs to do something about it. He's still got to be Donald Trump, but he needs to be careful about, I think he is a little bit of a prince in one way, where I think he's been in the center of power for so long that, he's getting into a den of a bunch of other snakes that are going to do all sorts of crap to him. And if he's constantly getting bogged down in little shooting matches, it's going to be a long slog for him, and it probably will derail his chances. So that's a legitimate problem. But it also shows to me, like, what was this Ed dude who disinvited him from the red state deal? It's like, the front runner, the person that the people, not the political class, but the actual people who vote Republican, like the most currently out of all the candidates, because he made a little unpolitically correct comment, we're going to disinvite him to some event. We're going to say, just like he thought they would, just like I thought they would, to all the people that are watching, they're going to give him the Heisman and keep him out of the debate for whatever reason they can, because they fear him. What's that going to do? It's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Trump will run as a third party. People like me will become so frustrated with the GOP apparatchiks and operatives and cultists. I'm not a Republican cultist. I'm a conservative. If the Republicans quit serving the conservative cause, the real conservative cause, not what they think it is, the real, social values, actually doing something about them, trade, doing something about that, having a strong military, but at the same time building the economy up enough to support that, and understanding that trade is the biggest component to that, not just lower taxes for their buddies and deregulation. They're going to lose people like me. And are they going to win elections? No, they're betting on they're betting on progressives to win elections, not the people that have been their solid base for years and years and years. They're idiots, and they're going to blow it. And it's sad to watch. It was sad to watch today how I go on Twitter and I occasionally tweet about supporting Trump. I also tweet about supporting some of the other candidates like Jindal and Cruz to a certain point, though I have been hammering Cruz on his fast track support. I've got some actor, some actor will say, come at me and say, look at the idiot. I don't remember the language he used, but, look at the idiot supporting Trump. Watch him. I'm like, okay, cool. Come to my timeline. Let's talk about it. Look through all this stuff. But it just opened this huge can of worms where all these GOP cultists, I'll call them, start attacking me because you can't just say, I like Trump, but I also like the other candidates. It's like, if you support Trump, he's not a conservative, so you're not a conservative. Blah, 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 blah. Again, totally alienating a future potential voter, someone who's been more or less, with reservations, a Republican for a long time, a conservative. You're a Trumpkin, or blah, 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 It just makes me want to give them the bird. Just say, you guys have sucked. You guys have sucked for so long. You keep promising, like a little Pied Piper, and I'm supposed to go, oh, it hasn't worked since Reagan, but this time it will, because we've got a group of candidates that can hit talking points really well. I'm really smart, and you like Trump, and he gave money to Hillary, and all they're going to do is just alienate people like me, and they're going to ruin their chances. So what should they do? All they got to do is give Trump a fair shake. If you don't like Trump, again, I've mentioned really valid concerns that are legitimate against Trump. So if you don't like him, if you think he's bad, that's fine. Good for you. I'm not saying you're a dummy for that. I mean, they're legitimate concerns, and I acknowledge them. But there's a difference between that than trying to stiff-arm Trump and people who support Trump, calling them crazies or Trumpkins or whatever, out of your process, out of the GOP process. All the GOP needs to do to keep everybody happy is rein in all their little apparatchiks and operatives and say, look, we need to give Trump a fair shot here. If Trump self-destructs, great for us. But we need to not rig up debates where we have hatchet people go after him. Jeb, your dad was a war hero. How does it feel? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, Trump, will you pledge allegiance to the Reich of the GOP as the first class? There's a little bit of difference there. So just give Trump a fair shot. And don't be ripping on his supporters. Because you got to understand that the GOP brand, Trump will tarnish it. It's already tarnished. You guys have, I'll try not to cuss. You guys have already fracked off for so long and screwed up time and time again. You've had the ability to kick the leftist ass, but instead you were too busy sucking on corporations' tits that you didn't, and you gave them an open. So the crazies came in and passed Obamacare. If you would have given a crap and fixed things like you should have, there would be no Obamacare. If you were conservative like you claim, there would be no Donald Trump running right now, because there would be no in for him, because people wouldn't be pissed off at you and willing to look at someone who's an outsider. It's your fault. If you F up this time again, it will be your fault again. When you look at the mirror and go, oh, you shouldn't have voted for Trump, it destroyed the whole... Blah. No, it's your fault. You guys had to have balls and fix things, and you didn't. You screwed up. And you are repeating the same crap process again. And you will lose your base, and you will lose elections, and you will lose people like me. Or you could do the smart thing, shut the frack up, and let the process work without being biased. Doesn't mean you can't criticize Trump, criticize away, but when you start going off and attacking and saying, oh, people who support Trump aren't really conservative, it's just going to bring us around and start attacking you back. We're going to go through and pick out your favorite candidates, and we're going to sift them, even worse than the leftards do. Because the leftards won't attack people on trade, because the same people that are that are buying favors like Trump that you hate do, that are buying both the GOP candidates and the DNC candidates, are the same people that fund them both, that like the trade agreements because they're on the top of the pyramid scheme. As everyone else gets fracked below a certain point, the top point, it's like corporate CEO compensation goes up like 20% a year. Oh, it's a highly competitive market. Really? That's why you guys can pay yourself 20% raises a year or more? Because it's highly competitive? We're outsourcing all the labor force. I'm sure there's people with MBAs out of India that we could pay, $60,000 a year that could do just as good a job as running all these countries as, country club so-and-so who knows so-and-so that went to this East Coast elitist school. And that's the only reason they're in this job. They're essentially blue bloods that just F things up, ruin one company, go get a big golden parachute, and then go to another one and do the same thing, pass them around. Let's outsource those dudes because they're idiots. So, it's like, what's my whole point in here? Just let the process work. And the more you rage over an outsider coming in, just shows that it's more like a cult, that you're more concerned with your brand over conservative values, and that you've absorbed the political progressive talking points political progressive language, the political progressive worldview. Oh, we can't have people use the offensive language like that because that's not going to do it. What people want is like a George Patton of politics to come in and clean crap up. That's why, I'm sure the elite's surprise that when Trump makes all these, politically correct faux pas, that people still like him, and to some extent the polling numbers go up. All right, how'd that happen? We arranged for this nice hatchet job in the debate. We even had this focus group after that would claim to everybody that Trump, lost some points with the business people, But instead, his polls go right up the other direction. Now, I don't think Trump will be able to do that forever. I think it will start biting him, and that's something where if he had a really politically astute advisor and was humble enough to listen, and I don't know how humble Trump is, so he might self-destruct. But at the same time, just let him do it. He doesn't need your help, because when you guys start pushing him to, you're going to piss people like me off who look at you as not really that much greater than the Democrats. You're not that hot. To conservatives, the Republican Party is not that hot. It's like, woo! Yeah, yay, McConnell, Bonner, all these douchebags that are in there. I shouldn't use that term. It's sinful. Forgive me. But these guys have gone in there, and maybe I just don't understand the system enough. Maybe I'm naive. I don't know. But they just go in and they flip and become leftist and corporate pawns. I'm not against corporations, but let's face it. There's oligarchies in America. There's crony capitalism. Both the left and the right feeds off those troughs, and it's getting worse and worse. So we need somebody to fix that. And Trump, who's been the ultimate crony capitalist. People say, well, Trump's been this crony capitalist, and then all of a sudden he's going to get elected. You think he's going to change? For some reason, and maybe it's stupid, maybe you guys have legitimate points. I think that Trump actually cares about the country. That's the vibe that I get. Even though he's a snake, even though he's an ass, I once called him like a tan yacht club dude, and I think he kind of is. At the same time, he might be the perfect guy. He knows where the skeletons are buried. He knows how the system works. The other people won't even acknowledge the corruption of the system, but yet they're the ones that are supposed to be the saviors against it. Trump fully acknowledges the corruption of the system. He's been there. He's used it. And he says he can fix it. The other guys won't even acknowledge it, are enslaved by it to lesser degrees, some than others. But to get on that stage, there's been compromises made. It's called structural corruption, and it's real, and it exists. And the buying and selling of politicians, many of them on that stage is real and exists. Trump acknowledges it, but rhinos can't even think in those terms. Oh, he said that he's so famous for buying politicians. That's so horrible. It's reality. Deal with reality. Do not deal with the world as you want it to be. Deal with it how it is. And I say that to myself too, because maybe I am putting a little bit too much faith in Trump. But at least he makes me feel good coming out swinging, some guy who's not part of the machine. And I go, he could be a giant psyop to split the party. I mean, all these rhinos out there are like, did Hillary Clinton hire him to split the party? Is he really a mole? It's like, I understand the conspiracy theory behind that. Anybody who knows me knows I'm into conspiracy theories, just a tad. I get that. But at the same time, it's like, if you just gave the process a chance, and if Trump just all of a sudden broke and ran on his own deal when every courtesy has been given him and he's been given a fair shake, people like me would be like, I don't know. But when he's not getting a fair shake, then if he breaks and runs, he might take me with him. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts on Trump. People have legitimate concerns about Trump. Again, if you don't like him, that's fine. But realize that huge voting bloc that supports Trump, you're going to need them. And so pragmatically for you, even if people like me disgust you, you're going to need people like me if you want to win elections. So the last thing you should be doing is actively trying to piss us off, which is all on social media I saw today. Just, let's attack Trump supporters day. Go for it. See how that works for you.